Thank you very much, Thomas. Somebody has to help me to, I think Aaron is already putting my presentation up. Yeah? Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk about household gardens, nutrition and gender in the context of dry areas. Yeah. Why do we talk about nutrition? Well, it's because malnutrition is such a huge problem in this part of the world. We've got phenomena like stunting and anemia. Stunting is that you're too short for your age. Particularly for very young children, that is a problem because they don't recover from that. And to give you some figures, between 35 and 55% of young children, preschool children, suffer from stunting. Similarly, for the same category of children, between 30 and 73% are anemic. They don't have enough iron in their blood. Now, why is that a problem? Stunting and other forms of malnutrition contribute to child mortality, disease, and disability. And it's irreversible in many cases. Well, mortality obviously is irreversible. If we unpack that a little bit, disability, for instance blindness, is due to, among many other things, vitamin A deficiency. Another problem is brain and neural defects, and that can happen because you don't eat enough folic acid in your diet. And it is also proven that inadequate intake of iron, folic acid and iodine affects the development of the brain and nervous systems and negatively affects school performance. You're talking about a whole generation, a future generation that will not reach their potential because of lack of micronutrients. As my colleague Thomas has already shown you, there's a huge difference in terms of the global vegetables like cabbage and the traditional vegetables that we focus much more on. Those traditional vegetables, I'm giving two examples here, Amaranth and African nightshade. They have way more iron, zinc, calcium and vitamin A. In this case, ranging between 1.5 to 14 times more per 100 grams dry matter. So huge differences just by selecting the right type of vegetable. So what do we do about it? We have a project called Home Garden Scaling, was funded by USAID, in which the primary outcome or objective was to improve the nutritional status of women of childbearing age and small children. We use a theory of change because that shows you where you come from and where you have to go to. Where do we come from? Problems, underlying problems. That is the usual situation that we find in the field. Lots of problems that we have to deal with. We have to go to long-term impacts such as increased income, sustainable vegetables, seed supply, and leading to nutritional improved status. How do we get there? Through strategies. We use push and pull strategies. Push is about getting the seeds out there, getting that variety, diversity of seeds, nutritious vegetables that taste well, that grow well, that are disease resistant. We do that through seed kits, and we make those seed kits also sustainable by involving the private sector so that they take it up, and we are a non-profit organization, we can distribute thousands of seed kits but not millions. When you talk about East and Southern Africa, millions of seed kits need to be distributed. We also have gender strategies, and now we're getting more into the pull. Why is it important that you involve women? Because women are the custodians of nutrition. They have to prepare better food. Why is food so important? Why is nutrition important? Many people in the villages do not understand malnutrition. It's often called a hidden hunger because you don't see it. Your children look healthy, but they're stunted and anemic. So nutrition awareness campaigns, that's what we call the pull, creating that demand. Then we have the push by the seed kits and capacity building, and not unimportantly, capacity building about how to produce those vegetables. So also we work with others. There are some areas that we work hand in hand, like Ministry of Health, WASH practices. These all contribute to better nutritional status. When we talk about nutrition and gender, we have to also, it's inevitable that we look at the problems that I discussed in the previous slide, but problems is also a matter of resilience. We work with the poor segments of the population. We work in those areas where malnutrition is strife. These people are vulnerable. Vulnerable is the opposite of resilience. We want to create resilience. They are food insecure, so we want to create food security. They are malnourished, so we want to give them healthy diets. How do vegetable household gardens contribute to that? Well, in terms of the basics of the pyramid, the resilience, we create, it creates income. Vegetables can be sold on the market, and that income creates assets. Assets are important for resilience. Vegetable household gardens also provide food security. Of course, that the vegetables can be consumed and sold, and that from the money you can buy other ingredients such as animal source proteins, and you consume, obviously, leading to healthy diets. Now, what is resilience? What is food security and healthy diets? The distinctions are a bit fuzzy. Can anybody shout out what is food resilience? Just something that comes up in your mind. Or what is resilience and what is food security? Anyway, it's still early, but let me give you a few definitions. Resilience is not an unchangeable status. It's the ability to anticipate and adapt and to recover from situations, the effects of shocks and stress. So not only to deal with the stress, also to anticipate and to come out in a better way after you've been attacked by stress, such as drought. Food security is something that affects all people. All people need to have access to sufficient and safe and nutritious foods. Yeah? So it's a subset of that resilience. If you're not resilient, food security is very difficult to achieve. Now, healthy diets is even more specific, because that is about meeting the nutrient requirements according to the individual physiological status, such as pregnant, or being very young, or being very old, and health status. If you're very sick, you also need different types of nutrients. But it's also about moderation. Malnutrition can also be overnutrition. That's also a form of malnutrition, and it's increasingly affecting poor and populations and people of the lower social classes. So moderate amounts of salt, sugar and fat are important. And then we have the issue of fiber, is good for a digestive system, and phytonutrients. Okay, so we know the difference between resilience, food security and healthy diets, but how does gender affect that? Anybody wants to shout out what is the relationship with gender and resilience? Sorry? It's direct. It's direct, yeah. Mm-hmm. Any elaboration on that?
You said that women are custodians of the food homestead.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so it's women, yeah, women, foods, they prepare the food, right. Resilience is also about assets. Yeah? Resilience is about having access to land. Resilience is also about being educated. All these are positive things that contribute to resilience. If you don't have that, you fall more into, it's easier to fall into vulnerability. Now, asset, education, access to land, these in the African context are very, very heavily gender tainted, if I can say that. Food security, obviously, women prepare food. Food security is also about traditions, about habits, about what is the place of women and children in the household, who eats first. For instance, in some tribes, in some parts of Kenya, women should not eat chicken. That brings bad luck. Yeah? Now, if you have a pregnant woman, if she doesn't have access to animal proteins, then you need to have a pretty good diet and eat lots of vegetables to compensate that. And healthy diets obviously is about food preparation and having access to resources, having income, you're being able to go to the market. Also mobility. Men can go everywhere, but women cannot go in some places it's culturally not accepted if they move too far away from their homestead to exchange their food items, their agriculture products for other products, so to create to provide a diverse diet. Vegetable production has a lot of constraints that we work on. A whole range of constraints for household gardens and for commercial plots. If you look at these, you'll find that most of these constraints again are very influenced by gender dynamics. For instance, no money for inputs. Men have often more access to money than women because they're highly more educated, have more access to jobs, or they have more access to markets. Not enough water. Women have to walk a long way, sometimes 3 hours to get water, and women do carry water all the way for their home gardens. Not enough land, we've talked about that. Poor quality of land, as women often get less good plots to cultivate than men. The selection of the land is different. Garden too far from the homestead. So all these areas, if you do an assessment of a rapid rural appraisal of the challenges, you have to look at those challenges through a gender lens and design your strategies, both your push and your push strategies, through a gender lens. Talking now a little bit about the challenges of water scarcity. It is important that you provide options to deal with water shortage, and that these options are suitable for the type of people and the type of resources that those people have. We found that sack gardens are a better way of using your water that you have to carry on your heads, for 3 hours, or water that you have to buy from a piki who comes and you have to buy it for 100 shillings per mtungi. Better to pour it in a sack, because that sack contains the water more, as opposed to pour that water on the ground and it just runs off in the ground, or it runs to places where the roots of the vegetables cannot reach it. Here you use that water in a most efficient way. Another way that uses water more efficiently is a keyhole garden. Keyhole garden is different layers of soil, organic matter, in a kind of pyramid shape and in a round shape. And in the center you have an organic pit. You pour the water in the center, it carries the nutrients and the water to the root areas of the vegetables. Drip irrigation is often considered something technology, heavy on technology, but it doesn't need to be. Here's an example from Uganda where you see it's pretty simple. a few buckets suspended on a wooden frame, linked to 2 different tees. Every tee has 2 lines, drip lines of about 10 meters, and this has really changed the lives of this family completely. They are able now to produce vegetables for the market, obviously also for their own home consumption, but they've turned into a commercial farmer. This investment, how much was this investment, do you think? $20, right? So be creative in the type of technologies that you're thinking about. I'm concluding with 3 more stories from different parts of East Africa. This is from Kiteto district, very dry area in Tanzania. And this lady, she's a grandmom, Manaida Saidi. She has to buy water. In Kiteto there are no rivers, there's no streams, there's no lakes. There are some pits, some commercial and some entrepreneurial youth. They dig big holes, really, really big holes, and get water. And some motorbikes fetch that water, and some bicycles, and they sell it. And she uses 5 buckets in the morning and 5 buckets in the evening to water her garden. So we asked, does that make sense, you know, paying 1,000 shillings every day for water for your gardens? And she said, yes, it does make sense, because she can now harvest that vegetables on a daily basis, and she can provide food to her family, to all her grandchildren. If she had to provide the same amount of, if she had to buy the same amount of vegetables from the market, it would cost her 2,000 shillings. Yeah? So she is actually making home economic sense by buying this water. Another story, this one is from Uganda, Robina. Also a grandmom. Grandmoms are great people. They have a lot of experience, and they're very, very driven, and they take care of their children and grandchildren. She also runs a school, and you see a picture of the school at the bottom. And she provides, these children, they stay there for a big part of the day. They also need to eat. So she used to grow vegetables in her garden to provide a school lunch. We provided her with seed kits, and she started then growing different types of vegetables. One of them was nakati, an improved form of nakati, and she loves it. Children loves it. Very nutritious, and she has seen her children blossom, and also the parents have seen their children become more healthy. Nakati is a great vegetable, leafy vegetable. So actually through that gardening, and she involves her children in the gardening, she feeds the children, she educates the children, the parents are being educated, she creates awareness about good nutrition, about home gardens, and about improved varieties. So great story. This is a story from Kenya, Eileen. She is a farmer in Western Kenya. She is entrepreneurial. She kind of has that ability to lead others. She stands out from the crowd, but also the ability and the desire to help others. So she has been walking into the office of the local government, with whom we also collaborate. And once she learned about the home garden scaling project, she was chosen, she was given an opportunity to lead others. We work with community-based trainers, so we trained her. So she's training others now in a demonstration garden. But the innovation that she created is that because we also, during our campaigns and awareness creation, we also educate on the improved ways of cooking vegetables. She has changed completely the way she cooks vegetables. In that part of Kenya, they traditionally cook, they harvest vegetables, put it in a pot and cook it, and then the next day cook it again, and then the next day cook it again until it's finished. So they harvest a lot and they re-cook it the whole week. To make matters worse, they add water and pour away the water, so that to remove the bitter taste. What you are eating on the 5th day, on the 7th day, is not really much more than fibers. Okay, fibers are good, but you also need the nutrients, obviously. We have introduced better ways of cooking. With leafy vegetables, you only need to fry it or parboil it for a couple of minutes, and then they are ready to eat. But you need to add a bit of onions, a bit of flavors, using local ingredients. So she is now campaigning in her area to actually change cooking habits. Okay, the way forward. When you want to improve nutrition through home gardens, you need a push as well as a pull strategy. Push, getting the technologies and the seeds out there. Pull, to create demand and awareness about why is it so important to improve your nutrition. Gender analysis is critical for addressing constraints in vulnerability, food security, and healthy diets. And to improve vegetable production in dry areas, consider innovations that are affordable, sustainable on the long run. Thank you very much.